Okay, we're going to start working on our violets project. And each one of the flowers and each one of the leaves and each one of the little buds are all a single wire. And if you want to make our arrangement sort of like this, we're going to need to make 9 flowers, 5 buds, and a bunch of leaves. I've made flowers in 2 different styles. You can see this is a crossover loop. And here's just a double loop, right? So let's get started with the basic crossover type loop, okay? So let's start with that flower. So I've got some 26 gauge shiny purple wire, copper core from Parawire, and this wire is thin enough that it fits through my green beads twice pretty well. It's not, you can make these without it fitting through your stem beads twice, but it's easier, it makes a stiffer stem if it fits through twice. I prefer 26 gauge if I can find one that fits. Otherwise, you can always use 28 because that will easily go through size 11 stem beads twice. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to make 5 petals. You can do 6 petals also. We're going to start with a 1-inch loop, and I tend to like doing things by measurement. You can always do a count and then continue to count, or you can do it by measurement. Okay, I'm gonna leave, I've got way too long a tail here. I'm gonna leave probably a good 8 to 10 inches of tail. That might be a little excessive, but I tend to be a little bit paranoid about not having enough wire. So 8 to 10 inch tail to start with, and then we can make that shorter if we want to. So we're gonna make our loop. Shape it fairly narrow. Do that twist. I do a full twist, and half a twist is probably totally sufficient. Okay, that's our first one. Now we need to go up the front and down the back to make our crossover loop. And I try and get these straight. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting out of the window here of the camera. Okay, up the front. I try and make them fit in between the beads. You can do this any which way. I am so funny about crossover loops. I like them when other people make them, and on my vintage flowers and stuff, I'm like, oh, this looks so good. And then when I make them, I'm like, oh, they look funny. But there's that first one. And from there, we need to make 4 more. And yeah, you want them to be fairly tight together. So you can see how I just have I did a full twist at the bottom, and I'm going to try and have the other one end right next to it. Okay, so let me keep going. It is a lot harder to try and be on screen and talk and bead all at the same time. I'm used to solving polymer science and engineering questions on these cameras, and I'm pretty good at writing and staying in the screen when I'm writing, but I have to be careful or I end up with my beads out of the screen for the camera. And I'm just trying to get this loop shaped fairly narrow, but bigger at the top than the bottom, pushing those beads on. I like to do the crossover loop where the wire is going between the beads in the first loop. That is definitely not required. And then full twist. So now I have 2 of these. very close together. Okay, so I'm going to make 3 more. I'll do that on screen, but so again, so I've just, this is the same as any crossover loop flower, what we've done so far. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring this together as tight as I can. Just from the what I've decided is the back side, I'm going to get that really, the 2 wires really close together, really tight under the back. I'm going to give that a full twist. Okay. So now I have my tail wire and I have my spool wire, and I'm going to cut that spool wire. Okay, so I have my nice little flower. I've closed the loop. I can shape it how I want, and I need to cut it from the spool wire now that I have found my pliers, my wire cutters. So both my tail wire and what I just cut from the spool are about 8 inches. When I do the stem, I like them to have them not be the same length, but we're going to make, we're going to put the center on, and we're going to make a little calyx, so they'll not be the same length very shortly. Okay, so for the center, I'm going to use these beads. These are size 8. And they're just something I had on hand. A fairly bright yellow. I like the way they look. Okay, so I have these 2 wires that got twisted below. I need to feed one of them up through between the petals. I need to pull it straight up. Okay, so I've got, I've got my flower. I've got 1 wire going up and 1 going straight down. I'm going to feed my bead on. I need to sort of get the bead how I want it to sit and cross that wire over. You can start to shape the petals, cup them, however you want them, to try and get that bead to sit where you would like it to sit. Okay. And once it's there, you bring the wire down underneath, and then you are going to give it another full twist right as close to the base as you can. Okay. And you can see my tail wire is now, my 2 wires are a little bit different in length. And I've got what's shaping up to be a cute little flower, right? I love these metallic beads. I just really like the way they shine and look. Okay. So from there, I need to get beads on for the little loops I'm going to make for the calyx. And so I am going to do two loops. And depending on your beads, I would recommend between a 6 and a 10 bead loop. So from a 1/2 inch to maybe 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to just get some beads on here. 6, 7. Okay, so that's 7 beads. I'm going to see if I like the way that size loop looks. That's a little small to me. So I'm going to go to a full 10 bead loop. Okay, so that was 7. I'm going to get 3 more. So I got 3 more beads. Now I'm going to make this 10 bead loop. Okay. I want it to be nice and tight under there. Full twist. Okay. Now I can make my second 10 bead loop on the same wire or on the other wire. After I make my second 10 bead loop, I'm going to give the wires a little twist so that they're together. So it really doesn't matter which one you choose. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to use the same one because I would like to have these be a little different length when I'm doing the stem beading, but that's just a personal preference. Okay, so now I've got 10 beads again, and make a second 10 bead loop. Pull that other wire out of the way. Okay. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to straighten everything up. I'm going to pull my two wires down together. I'm going to push up, make sure everything's tight. And I am just going to twist these wires right as close as I can. Another full twist. Okay. Now we have our little flower. Okay. So what I suggest you do is make as many of these as you want to make and leave them just like this. So just set this aside, and we're going to make, when we put the stems on, we'll put them in little groups. You can put them in a whole bundle together, or if you know that you're going to put them in sort of a wider mouth vase, then you might want to make them in smaller groups so that you can space those groups out within the vase. So there's two different ways to do the final assembly, but what you want to do is make several of these. And you can also make the double loop type as well, which I can show you. The other thing we need to do is make some buds. So I'm going to show you the buds, and then I'll show you the double loop as well. The double loop is what we did, what I showed you with using the leftover beads. So you already have seen that once, but we'll go through it again.